Yesterday, Sayadaw explained how the bhikkhu requested the Buddha to teach, wanting to practice the Dhamma, cherishing the Dhamma, wanting to practice diligently. And Buddha replied, Tasamatiha tvam bhikkhu adi meva viso dehi kusalesu dhammesu. One should purify from the beginning. One should purify the beginning of the wholesome deeds. In order that one should be purified, in order to be gentle, in order to have physical, verbal, mental behavior that is pure, clean, lovable, one needs to practice. And yesterday, Sayadaw explained what it means by the beginning of the wholesomeness. And yesterday, Sayadaw explained that the beginning of the wholesomeness means purification of sila, morality, and to have right view. And today Sayadaw will explain what is sila and how one should practice sila and what is the right view. And Sayadaw will explain, combining the theory and the practice. There are three kinds of action in the human beings: kaya kamma, bodily action; vaci kamma, verbal action; and mano kamma, mental action. If one cannot control one's body, speech, and mind systematically, if one does not practice in order to control one's body, speech, and mind, his or her behavior, his or her physical behavior, verbal behavior will be unruly, without any control. So one should practice sila, morality, in order to have purity in body and speech. Silatiti kaya vaci kammani samadahati samatapetiti atho. Meaning that through the practice of sila, one's physical, verbal action will be pure, clean, gentle, cultured, being free from suffering, and the behavior by body and speech will be lovable. And one, in order to have physical, verbal behavior, pure, clean, and gentle, one should have the restraint. So one should practice restraint in order to practice sila, morality. Having sila, the person's physical, verbal behavior will be blameless, pure, and clean, and the person is not hurting or harming others. The practice of sila is beneficial for oneself as well as others. So one should bear the sila so that his or her sila will not fall. In order to keep one's physical, verbal behavior to be cultured and tame, one needs to practice the sila, one needs to bear the sila, so that one will not be departing from sila, and one will not fall. One will not fall by lack of sila. If the person commits cruelty, torturing, tormenting others, killing others, it is said that the person falls due to his or her wrongdoing, killing, tormenting, torturing others. And also, if the person commits sexual misconduct, rather than to be content with what he or she has, and if the person tells lies, then it is said that the person is falling. And if the person is taking intoxicants, if the person is being unruly, his or her bodily behavior, verbal behavior will be unclean. And having the wrong view, not knowing that good deeds bring good results, bad deeds bring bad results, the person commits wrongdoings, and the person is said to fall, committing these wrongdoings, and the person will get bad consequences. The person who does not have the opportunity to learn from good parents and teachers, such kind of person falls as he or she commits wrongdoings. So in order not to fall, one should bear the sila, one should practice the sila, so that his or her bodily behavior, verbal behavior will be pure and clean. So one should practice the sila, one should bear it, so that the body and speech will be proper and peaceful and gentle. For the person who practices, who bears the sila, will be purified, and sila, morality, save and uplifts the person who practices. And in Pali it is called sila, morality. There are sila, morality, that should be observed by lay person, and there is also sila, morality, that the monks should observe. As a lay person, the basic is the 5 precepts. So one should refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and taking intoxicants. Refraining from these 5 things, the person is a true human, and the person can observe the 8 precepts, having the right livelihood as the 8th precept. Refraining from 3 wrongful bodily actions, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. These 3 should be refrained, and one refraining from 4 kinds of wrongful verbal speech, refraining from lying, slandering, harsh speech, cursing, talking senseless talk, wasting time with the senseless talk, refraining from these 4 kinds of wrongful verbal action, and refraining from wrongful livelihood, such as earning as a hunter or a fisherman, refraining from such kind of livelihood, wrongly livelihood, it makes up Ajivatamaka Sila. Refraining from these 3 wrongful bodily action, four of the wrongful action, refraining from the wrongful livelihood, makes up Ajīva Dhammaka Sila, 8 precepts, having the right livelihood as the 8th precept. When the person is practicing, it is good to keep at least Ajīva Dhammaka Sila, and it is better if the yogi can observe 8 or 10 precepts during the intensive practice. In the Ajīva Dhammaka Sila, the Sura Meriya, refraining from taking intoxication, is not mentioned directly. But taking drugs, intoxication, alcohol, involves indulging in the tasting senses, and it is included in the Kamesumicchācara. Refraining from taking intoxicant is included in Kamesumicchācara in the Ajīva Dhammaka Sila. Observing the 8 precepts, the person has to refrain from any kind of sexual activity, even with one's own partner, should be refrained in the practice of the 8 precepts, which is conducive to the intensive practice. Practicing, observing the 8 precepts, one has more time in the practice. One should refrain from taking food after midday. One has to refrain from taking dinner, so it saves time preparing dinner, eating dinner. Usually, people in the East as well as the West, they prepare their dinner nicely. Usually the dinner is more special than any other meals. So one has to take more time to prepare for dinner. And refraining from eating after midday, it saves time, not having to prepare for food after midday. People who are in the everyday life, after taking dinner, having fun, eating dinner, their mind is inclined to sensual pleasure. Refraining from dinner, the mind will not be inclined onto the sensual pleasure. That's why refraining from eating after midday is conducive for the practice in order to purify oneself. And also dancing, singing, listening to music, seeing shows, also adorning oneself, putting on makeup, cosmetics, lead to sensual desire. If the person is taking much time to beautify oneself, it takes a lot of time, especially when a person is about to go to a party. The person beautifies himself, herself in front of the mirror, looking in the mirror, straight in the mirror, or looking sideways in the mirror, turning the body around to see if everything is okay in the beautifying. So such kind of beautifying oneself with makeup and cosmetic takes a lot of time. Refraining from beautifying, the person gets more time for practice. Practicing meditation in order to beautify one's mind, one needs more time to beautify the mind. Refraining from beautifying the body, one gets more time in the practice in order to beautify the mind. So one should give priority to beautifying the mind rather than beautifying the body. Purification of the mind does not need any kind of material makeup or cosmetic. By practicing meditation, one can keep oneself purified in bodily behavior, verbal and mental behavior, which is most important. So when practicing meditation, it is better to keep things simple so that one's mind will not be inclined into sensual desire, sensual objects. And also with the accommodation, with the bedding, people who are enjoying sensual pleasure, they have high, luxurious bed, which is soft and very comfortable, which leads to sensual pleasure. As a yogi's bed should be simple, so that it will be conducive for intensive practice in order to beautify the mind. So 8 precepts has been explained. And as a monk, there are rules not to commit such things bodily, not to commit wrongdoings by body and speech. So there is the discipline set by the Buddha for the monks. And one should practice observing the monk's rule with courage and faith and confidence. Whoever practices the sila, morality, will be saved and uplifted. The person who practices and bears the sila will be uplifted. In Visuddhimagga, there mentions a lot in detail about sila in order to purify one's bodily behavior and verbal behavior. Sila is also called as sisa. Sisa means the head. So in the body, the most prominent part of the body is the head. And if a person wants to get rid of another person, cutting off the head, then the other person cannot live any longer. In order to practice high-class practice, sila, morality, is most important, just like the head is most important in the human body. Just as when the head has been cut off, one will not live any longer. In the same way, when sila, morality, is lacking, one will not be able to practice. The mind cannot become calm without the practice of sila. So the morality precept of a lay person as well as the sila, morality of a monk is very important, just like the head of just like the head, which is important in the whole body. So if the head has been cut off, nothing can be done anymore. Even if there is the head, but if one has a headache, one cannot do anything. And one cannot work when there is a headache. And when the head has been cut off, the person dies eventually. So, sila, morality, is compared to the head, which is very important. Another example is the tree example. When the tree has grown up, absorbing the nutrition from soil, water, and air, the tree lives and grows. When the nutrients has been absorbed from the soil, air, and water, the stalk of the tree grows, and it grows, and the tree proliferates, giving branches as well as the flower buds and as well as the fruits. And the tree proliferates with branches, leaves, and fruits. If the tree has been cut off from the branch, if the branch of the tree has been cut off, it doesn't matter, it will grow again. But if the nutrients cannot be absorbed from the root, from the soil, water, so if nutrients cannot be absorbed through the roots of the tree, then the tree become withered, and eventually the tree will die, not getting nutrients. So it is a good example. It is important that the tree is kept green and fresh, having the nutrients from soil, water, and so on. So in the same way, in the practice, one needs sila, morality. As a lay person or as a monk, one needs to observe the respective sila. But some of the monks, they have been so used to living outside without learning the Vinaya, even though they want to practice, even though they want to follow the Vinaya, but as the teachers do not teach them the Vinaya, they do not know how to observe the Vinaya, and it has become a habit. In order to have a humane mind, in order to have human knowledge, in order to be outstanding human, in order to develop the mind and the knowledge, sila plays an important role. Without the practice of sila, it will not be impossible. Without the practice of sila, it will be impossible to practice in order to purify the mind. So in order to purify the mind, sila is very important. Practicing the sila, one's physical, verbal behavior will be proper, and one will be able to practice in order to develop both the mind and the knowledge. Especially in order to uplift one's life, in order to keep one's life uplifted to be special, to be high and noble, to have good quality of life, one needs to practice Satipatthana meditation. And in the practice of Satipatthana meditation, sila, morality, the discipline is very important. When practicing, one should practice in order to be proper. One should also follow the discipline in order to reach the top. In order to be beneficial, in order to reach the top, one needs to practice the Dhamma. And in the practice of Dhamma, in order to keep oneself proper, there should also be Vinaya, discipline. So in this way, in order to keep oneself proper during the practice, there should be Vinaya, the discipline. The Dhamma, the definite guidance and instructions, as well as the Vinaya, the discipline, is the true culture. Refraining from wrongdoings by body and speech, the physical behavior, verbal behavior will be blameless, pure, clean, peaceful, and lovable. But when observing the precepts, when observing the morality, one should not be expecting personal gain by observing the precepts, and one should not be expecting fame such as other people thinking high esteem of him or her by the practice of sila. So one should not be expecting personal gain or fame that can arise by observing the sila, so that his or her sila, morality, will be pure and clean. Practicing sila, refraining from wrongdoings, one gains benefit from observing the sila. One will have a good control of oneself so that the physical behavior, verbal behavior will be pure and clean, and other people do not get hurt. Other people will not suffer physically or mentally. Controlling oneself, one refrains from wrongdoings, and thus one is protecting others from being hurt, protecting others suffering physically and mentally. So by having good control of oneself, one protects others from being hurt. Having metta and karuna, having loving kindness and compassion, one does not want others to suffer physically or mentally. Not wanting others to suffer physically and mentally, one controls oneself. So in this way, protecting others from being hurt, out of metta and karuna, one also controls oneself. And with moral shame and moral fear, one controls one's bodily behavior, verbal behavior, so that one will not be morally degraded. Hiri and ottappa, moral shame and moral fear, plays an important role to refrain from wrongdoings. Having compassion, having empathy, the person does not want others to suffer, and thus the person controls himself, herself. So in this way, as a human being, each and every human being has the responsibility to control himself, herself, so that they will not be hurting others, and others will be protected from being hurt. So every human being on earth should have the responsibility of controlling themselves so that they will not be hurting others. Every person, regardless of religion or race, anyone, whether a Christian or a Muslim or people of any other belief, they should also control themselves so that they will not be hurting others. But in the world, there are a lot of people who are lacking discipline, and thus the whole world is suffering. As a conduct of every person in the world, they should observe at least the 5 precepts. Observing the 5 precepts, the quality of the person will be uplifted, the person's life will be becoming high, and the 5 precepts should be the norm, it should be the standard. Without the practice of the 5 precepts, the person's quality will not shine, the person will not have quality of life. Being able to observe the 5 precepts, the quality of the person will shine, the person will become glowing with good quality through the practice of sila. So sila, morality, is the norm, it is the standard. Yogis should keep up their norm, yogis should keep up their standard, not to deteriorate, but they should have the morality so that their standard will become higher and higher. So sila is the norm, it is the standard. It is the ideal of a person. And Buddha said sila should be suvisuddha, meaning sila should be completely purified. Sila should be purified to a complete level. And one should purify the beginning of the wholesomeness by purifying the precepts so that his or her precept should be completely purified. And Sayadaw will continue to explain tomorrow.